Did Xilonen really fall off? Yes and no. So the thing about Xilonen is, like, she was never a character that was, like, all that meaningful to her teams. But she was basically, like, at least a side grade in pretty much every team when she came out if you didn't need the grouping, which you kind of didn't. Right? Grouping has come back a little bit recently because of the Venti buffs. I don't know how long it'll stay actually relevant in Stygian. Maybe they'll keep it relevant, maybe they won't. Kind of hope they do, honestly, because groupable content generally has some really cool tech for it, right? Like the Sugo's fall damage shit is really nice. I think that's very healthy for the game, and I hope they keep shit like that. It's frustrating to like bash your head against a wall for 3 hours trying to clear, but I do think it's anyways. What was the question again? I got distracted. Xilonen, right? You look at the characters that were released before Xilonen and what the like strong characters were, right? Is like Molani, Arlecchino, to some extent Clorinde, Neuvillette, Lenny, right? And Hyperbloom. But if you're dismissing Hyperbloom because you're assuming like, okay, let's only think about what people that care about the meta for a long time and want to hyper invest into strong teams will do, right? So sure, no Hyperbloom. You're basically looking at Lenny, Arlecchino, Clorinde, Molani, right? And Neuvillette. And what you'll notice is that Xilonen can work pretty well with all of them, right? Arlecchino's reaction teams have a problem, which is that VV uptime can kind of suck ass. That's one of the main reasons why back when Arlecchino was released, one of the best Hydra units to use with her was Candace. Candace having lower field time, and Candace C6, by the way, so you get the actual Hydra up. But Candace having lower field time allowed you to not only have shorter rotations, but also get through the shit you needed to do with her faster, which let you swap to Arlecchino with more time left on your VV, on your EM buff or damage buff with Sucrose or Kazuha, right? But Candace feels pretty awful to play, right? Characters that don't have a lot of hits, that are reliant on a Fav proc for their ER requirements to be even possible to reach, even built full ER, aren't fun. That shit feels ass. So while you had ways to work around it, those ways were locked behind Candace C6 and still kind of uncomfortable to play. And so Xilonen added a lot of quality of life to those archetypes. Sure, they weren't better than the Chevaliers teams, but they were close. And at some levels of investment, they could be better because of the melt stuff, right? Neuvillette. Xilonen was just pretty good for Neuvillette, right? Like, yeah, no real caveats there. Linny, similar thing, right? Linny uptime could be kind of annoying to deal with, and also his last slot options were often kind of, they ended up being Xiangling because there wasn't another good buffer for him. And that was still pretty solid, but obviously, especially if you're looking at like R1 Linny with fucking top 0.1% artifacts, the value of characters like Xiangling goes down. But Xilonen was pretty good with this, right? Clorinde, which had those aggravate teams, and while her best aggravate teams, even when Xilonen came out, I think were still the Sucrose Kirara ones. Bro, that shit is fake as hell. Or maybe it was Kazuha Kirara. I don't know. Dude, fuck the Clorinde teams that use that, alright? And just getting your Electro Swirls in general with aggravate. Yeah, like, and there was the Nahida ones, right? Where getting your Electro Swirls were fucking awful. Like, they were reliable setups, but one, sometimes they didn't work in AoE because official Electro app sometimes hit the wrong enemy. And then you would have your one Electro app on one enemy and the next on the other enemy, and then you wouldn't actually end up with an underlying whatever. There were a lot of potential issues, is the point, and it made it feel awkward, and it made it obviously harder to play. So, sure, Xilonen wasn't necessarily an upgrade to the Clorinde teams, but she was basically a side grade with a massive boost to quality of life, right? And then Molani, where she was, I would say, pretty... Molani teams always feel awful to play, and the less layers of bullshit you have to go through, the better. And at least with Xilonen, you had a healer, even if it wasn't a great healer for Molani. Alright. So, like, when Xilonen came out, she wasn't really, like, a major upgrade to any team, but she was incredibly versatile. The problem is really what came after, where, yeah, she was good for Maoika, but then Eon-san came out and was just better than her, right? And if you look at the other stuff released after, you have Chaska, can't really use her. You have Varesa, doesn't like using her at all. You have Skirk, can't use her at all. You have Flenzi Nefa, technically usable, but Sucrose is so good that unless you've got fucking C6R5 Xilonen, it's kind of worse than just using Sucrose. And because they started, I mean, we watched the Flip video yesterday, right? They started giving those dedicated supports defensive utility. Flynn doesn't need the defensive utility the same way that Molani might, right? And then obviously Nefer can't use her. Zabai can use her, but I mean, especially with Linnea's release, we can see like it doesn't work anymore. Triple Geo Xilonen doesn't shred resistances, and Varka can't use her. So like, when Xilonen came out, she was a relatively versatile, mostly side grade to slight upgrade type of character. But because of the way the meta shaped up since, because so many characters just don't like her in their teams, I do think she's lost a lot of value. That versatility kind of isn't all that versatile anymore. Like she's still a good unit. She's still nice to have. How much do I use her nowadays? The main reason I use her nowadays is because I don't have two Eon Suns and I'm a Varesa main. So if I want to play Maoika, I'm going to have to do a team without Eon Sun if I want to play Maoika and Varesa at the same time. And honestly, unless I'm playing Skirk, I think I'd rather default to double Cryo with Escoffier now over using Xilonen. So I think that for me, I actually don't use her that much anymore. Is C6 Eon Sun better than C0 Xilonen? Yeah. For Maoika and also as a whole, I would say yeah, pretty definitely. She's good for high resistance enemies. The thing about that is like, she is, but I don't think she's as good as you think. The gap between her and Eon-san for Maoika, for example, is actually big enough that even with a bit of extra resistance, like 50-ish, it's still very similar to Eon-san. It kind of has to be like even a higher reses than that. And at that point, maybe you shouldn't be playing the Maoika team in that content anyways. Everybody is a fraud to you. Farina, Xilonen, Kazuha, everybody. Bro, you cannot have 3,000 fucking Bennett's and Eon-san. I mean, oh no. Zajef, how dare you emphasize that you don't need to pull for every character? Like, I get what you're saying, but I feel like you're getting upset at something because you don't understand the purpose of the statement. I think it's actually pretty important to push back against narratives of characters being fucking Genshin Jesus when they're not. Because if you want to keep up with the meta and you pull for someone because you hear a lot of good things about them and it doesn't actually end up helping you that much because you kind of got misled, you already had other things that worked, you're gonna have less primos now. And if there's a character you want to get because they actually are that good or just because you like them, if you don't have enough primos, now you're gonna have to spend money to get them. And that sucks. Can we hear your unbiased opinion of Varesa's strength? Varesa's strength is, like, carried by how good her banners have been. Like no glaze, no nothing. Varesa's a pretty decent character. A lot less nowadays, though, with the Lunar stuff, right? Lunar releases have given Varesa a fucking massive run for her money. But honestly, a lot of the value of Varesa is just how good her banners have been. Like, to the point where I was actually considering maybe getting Xilonen on the J account just because that banner was so good, right? She's really good if you have all of her premium supports. Yeah, but post Nogcry, I don't think she's like all that worth going for anymore. The chat never clear fearless with Varesa and C0 Eon-san, where they're acting like she's not a character without C6. Well, it's not that she's not a character without C6, it's that she's like with C0 Eon-san, she's like Linny, and with C6 Eon-san, she's like almost Maoika. Like, it's a big ass fucking difference. I'm saying Eon-san and Shavars. right? If we're cost maxing this, my 4 cost C2R1 Varesa is 200k plus damage. You can expect that from 4 cost Nocry teams. I mean, that's not even necessarily true anymore. Like, 4 cost Zabai solos that shit. Trust me. it's gonna eclipse that 200k mark. Like, the biggest issue with Versa is that her, like, the C4 cons for her team are really good. And her C1 is ass, but her C2 is, like, okay. But, like, if you get the 4-star cons without going for the C2, the value of the C2 is so much lower, right? A lot of the value of the C2 is the fact that you're getting Eonson and Chevreuse C6 on the way. Alright, like you said, your C2R1 Varesa is at 200k. My C0, or my C1, which is basically C0 because the C1 is fucking dog shit, Varesa, with Lost Prayers, is at 173. Alright, like, I'd probably be at around 160. 155, 160. With C0. What does C1 do? It buffs her passive that makes her plunges do more damage after an E. Usually it's 50% motion value on the normal E and 180 on the enhanced E. With C1, it's 180 on every E, and it also applies to the mini burst. But versus motion values in general are so high across the board that it's, like, percentage-wise, not that big of an increase. It's like 8-ish%, if I remember correctly. Is an 8 normal for a C1? Yeah. Oh, there's a lot of, like, relatively C1s. But it's not 8 team DPS, 8 personal DPS, right? I think it's a bit less than that, actually. Anyways, the point I'm getting at here is, like, if you have Eonson and Chevreuse cons already, getting cons on Varesa is probably way less impactful than getting cons on the non-crying units, for example. Is Varesa premium team stronger than Binefa Wheelchair? Yeah, it is. I don't think it is if you have C0 Eonson and C0 Chevreuse, though. Maybe. It's probably pretty close. Is C6 Eonson a bigger upgrade than C6 Chevreuse? Yeah. The buff from C6 Chevreuse is bigger, but in most Varesa teams, C2 Eonson buff runs out before you're done with your rotation. And then it's not just that you don't have the extra 25% and the extra, like, 120 flat attack, it's also that you lose the 690 and the 30% attack from Eonson C2 because the burst runs out. If not for her fun gameplay, would you consider Varesa a fraud too? I guess, yeah. I don't usually call characters frauds in a vacuum, though. Like, I use the term fraud. Fraud, as a word, implies fraudulent action, right? Bad performance isn't fraud. Bad performance that's passed as good performance is fraud, right? Like, if I see someone saying Varesa is the best, or I don't know, Varesa is one of the strongest 5-star carries because her one-cost team is way stronger than Flynn's one-cost team, or way stronger than Nefer's one-cost team, or way stronger than Skirk's one-cost team, or something like that. Then labeling her a fraud in that context would be accurate. Like, yeah. That's a cap. It's not cap, like, because it's true. Like, one-cost Varesa is way stronger than those one-cost teams. But it is also deceptive. Alright, Varesa is the sort of character that, like, when her last rerun came around, pre the most recent wave of Not Cry bullshit, was, like, in a vacuum, pretty okay. Not quite on the same level as characters like Skirk, but not that far behind. And potentially more appealing to new accounts because of the way the team building worked, because of the one-cost reality, and because the great characters for her were on her banner already, right? But in order for that to stay the case, or in order for that to be true, like, now it needs to stay the case that, you know, if you want to just get a new character starting from not having a team, basically, and have a, like, relatively functional team, that Varesa is still a very strong contender. And, like, is that the case? when Zabai was released and has like a relatively similar um result for like non-Columbina stuff. And then Zabai also has the upside of if you want to go for more, she gets way stronger, unlike Varesa, right? Like I think my evaluation of Varesa's value for newer accounts went down a lot with Zabai's release.